We're going to get started. So I want to welcome you all here. I am Dan Schmidtiel. I'm the principal of Eastlake High School. We are thrilled to have the opportunity to host this listen and learn session in Area 1. And we want to welcome our different panel members. So we've got Miss Edmond and Miss Long from the school board, Mr. Hendrick, our superintendent, and Dr. Seymour Brown as well. And I do want to pass it on to Dr. Seymour Brown to get us started.
From here. And thank you, Mr. Schmidtiel, and for hosting us tonight. Welcome everyone to the first ever Community Connections Listen and Learn in Pinellas County Schools. I am Dr. Seymour Brown, as mentioned, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and I will be your host and moderator this evening. But first of all, let's give a big round of applause to the Eastlake High School students for the wonderful performances outside and for guiding us here to the cafeteria this evening. The purpose of this series is to provide an opportunity for the stakeholders of Pinellas County Schools to engage with the school board, the superintendent, and district leadership, which is imperative in promoting continuous improvement for our students, families, staff, and the community. Following the success of the Superintendent's Listen and Learn series, expanding this type of stakeholder engagement represents both the school board and superintendent's commitment to be visible in the community and will continue to strengthen the partnerships both as a district and within the school communities. The series tonight here at Eastlake High School is the first in a series of 5 annual community meetings in alignment with the district's 5 school areas. Each of these sessions will take place at a school within the given area or zone. Tonight is Area 1. By hosting the sessions by area and zone, it allows the school board, superintendent, and district staff who serve those schools to be present and to hear directly from the stakeholders. PCS Community Listen and Learn sessions will be open to all stakeholders, students, families, staff, partners, and community members. To start things off, I would like to give an opportunity for our school board members and for the superintendent to introduce themselves and welcome our stakeholders. School board member, Ms. Edmond, would you like to start the introduction?
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us in person and virtually. My name is Caprice Edmond, and I'm absolutely happy to be here, and it's truly been an honor to serve.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Eileen Long. This is a wonderful opportunity to be able to ask us questions and for us to interact with the community. I think this is the best part of the job, is when you can go out in the community and meet the constituents, parents, community members. And so I'm really excited for tonight, and I thank you all for being here.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Hendricks, superintendent in my first year as superintendent. Thankful to be here this evening. I want to thank our board members for being here with us. We have a number of principals in the crowd, teachers, community members, parents. Thank you all for being here. And I do want to give a special thanks to Mr. Schmidtiel for opening up his building. And you saw some of his students performing. We also saw his theater students performing Mamma Mia, if you were in here early. And they're coming up, I think, in 2 weeks with their play. So if you liked it, come back out and see the students in action. But thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you. I want to do a quick review of the agenda tonight before we begin. Superintendent Hendricks will start us off by doing an overview. Next, we will conduct a Q&A with the superintendent and board members, which will last about 30 minutes. As you came in this evening, you received an index card to write questions on. If you need an additional index card or have written your questions already, just raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect or to provide you with an additional index card. For those online, you can enter your questions in the chat. Following the Q&A, there will be an opportunity for all stakeholders to provide feedback for the district's strategic plan. Superintendent Hendricks will give a brief overview of the strategic plan, and then everyone will be able to directly write feedback that will be collected and compiled. During this time, the superintendent and board members will be present and will continue to speak with stakeholders. Superintendent Hendricks, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. So I want to give an overview of where we are in the district, first from a high level, and then some specific things that we're working on, and even some highlights here at our schools in Area 1. So first, just a little bit about our vision and mission and core values. In my first year as superintendent, I've really tried to make a connection with our community around these core values. Most of our staff can state our vision of 100% student success and knows our mission of preparing each student for college and career in life. We've really put an emphasis on how do we get there? What makes us unique as a community? And this year we've spent time diving into each of these 6 core values, spending time to recognize our employees, both publicly and through online submissions where employees can recognize one another. We've had over 7,000 of those submissions this year. I've recognized employees at every one of our school board meetings, and every month our principals recognize employees who embody some of these characteristics in their schools. And so we're proud of kind of connecting ourselves with what we stand for, particularly in a time of transition in the world and in education, that knowing what we stand for and how we connect with one another is really, really important. In terms of our school district, most people are always surprised when they hear that we're the largest employer in Pinellas County, over 13,000 employees, about 7,000 of which are teachers, and we're represented by a 7-member elected school board. You've met Mrs. Long and Mrs. Edmond, who are here this evening, and each of these events that we have, we'll have 2 or 3 school board members attend to answer questions and also interact with the community. It's important to know that from an employee standpoint, we continue to try to better ourselves and make sure that our employees are the very best they can possibly be. In a conversation I had with a parent in the room beforehand, it centered on quality teachers at her children's schools and that those quality teachers make the education. I've said that over and over again, that we can do a lot of things right. We can have nice facilities, great baseball teams, busing, food, all those things can go well, but if the child's teacher in the classroom is not good, it's not good for parents and it's not good for children. And the reverse is also true. Great teachers can overcome some other issues, whether they be in transportation or other things, because at the end of the day, it's what happens in the classroom that matters most. So we're proud of our teachers as they stand as our largest employee group, but I want to thank our school board for being here this evening. We have in our district 128 schools, 3 adult education centers, 2 technical colleges, 18 charter schools, and certainly here at Area 1, nearest here, Eastlake Middle School, Cypress Woods Elementary, Brooker Creek Elementary, those principals are all here tonight. Oldsmar Elementary principals here tonight. I want to thank them for being here. It's a very proud school district. It's large. We're the 30th largest in the nation, the 8th largest in the state of Florida, about 95,000 students, and we're proud of our diversity and even our traffic from time to time for those who came in this evening. In terms of our budget, a $1.6 billion budget, about $1 billion of that is in operating, the other parts in capital expenses, and most of that goes towards employee salaries. Over 80 cents on every dollar does that. You'll see facilities on there as part of that, our food service work. But as a public institution that takes tax dollars, we are very public with our budget. You can participate in our budget hearings each year. They occur in the summer, late summer, early fall, and obviously all of that funding directly from the state and very public and accountable in how we spend it. As Dr. Brown mentioned, I launched when I became superintendent a series of listen and learn events to hear directly from the community. You can see on the screen the 9 events that we held starting in July, going through, I think, the end of September. And we did them all over our district, and for some of them we had different themes. We had one really around the arts. We had some in partnership with Pinellas County Classroom Teachers Association, who's here this evening. Thank you for being here, both our current president and future president, both here. And through that process, we got a lot of feedback from stakeholders. Part of that feedback we're going to share in a little bit, but first I want to share a couple of the other ways that we've gathered that feedback. Out of those listen and learn sessions, at one of them, it was actually at Melrose Elementary School, I had a student ask me, when are you going to get the students' feedback? And we said, well, they're invited to these events, but students didn't feel like sort of this more formal event was the same for them. So we created some student leadership summits to directly solicit feedback from students in our district. And over the course of the last couple of months, we held 4 of those at the University of South Florida in St. Petersburg. All 128 schools participated. There were anywhere between 5 and 10 students per school, depending on the grade levels and the level of school. And we got their feedback the same way we did in those 9 listen and learn sessions. We asked what's working, what needs to be improved. And if you think the adults are honest, wait till you hear what the students say. And so they gave us great feedback. But we also wanted the experience that the students had not to be a one-off that was great for the handfuls that could come, but how could they take that ideas that they learned and discussed and become leaders in their own schools? So they were tasked with going back to their school and doing the same type of activity where they could gather the student voice at their school. What do students at their school say is important in making improvements in their school? And again, who knows best other than the students that attend those schools? So ironically today, this afternoon, I had my first follow-up session with one of our elementary groups. So I had about 40 elementary schools online with me, and they shared what they did at their schools to gather feedback from students in their schools and what their focus was in terms of improvement in their schools. And we heard everything from improving school lunches, more recess, better car line, specific things in the cafeteria. One student told me we did a survey. It was very scientific. We identified 2 food items that our students do not like, and we asked the cafeteria manager to not offer those anymore, but instead to offer these other ones. But they really went back and took it to heart, and their principals listened to them, and some of the principals today said, we were able to change these things, and then this other thing, like more recess, that's not going to happen, but here's a way that we might be able to work some things into lunch and things like that. But to see how proud the students were that they owned that voice at their school, it was critically important. And one of the reasons why it was so important was because of the stakeholder survey results that we received. We do a survey each and every year, open to every parent, community member, our employees, our students, and you can see some data there on responses. But the number one piece that our students, over 30,000 who answered the survey, said was that they didn't feel like their voice was heard enough in their school. And the Student Leadership Summits were in part a way to address that, to elevate the student voice, to get more input into what is going on in their school. And so it was really refreshing today to see our elementary school feedback. We're going to be doing it again with the other half of our elementaries than our middle school and our high school students. But the sessions themselves were incredibly positive, a lot of fun. The students developed some leadership skills, and they're carrying them on in their schools. So what were some of the key takeaways from all of this feedback that we received, both from the listen and learn sessions, the student surveys, the parent surveys, the faculty surveys, and then the student leadership summits, all of those together. So we produced for the listen and learn sessions a community report. We shared all 10,000 pieces of feedback. There was some quantitative feedback in that report that you could see the percentage of people that thought this was good or that was good, what needed to be improved. And then we had our research team develop themes and look at those themes across the listen and learn sessions and across our surveys. And so what you see on the screen, I know it may be a little difficult, but I'm going to spend just a few minutes because I think it's important that if you're going to come out and ask the community what they think and what their opinions are, that you actually do something with the results. And so communication and hearing from the school district leaders is important, is what we heard. And so this next set of community sessions is in part because of that. And I want to give credit to our school board because they asked for this. They said they really enjoyed the listen and learns that we did, but they wanted to add sort of a Q&A question to it that you're going to see tonight. And that was an enhancement from the first round that we did. Vast majority of stakeholders in our surveys and what we did in person said that our schools are safe in terms of doors and locks and processes and drills, but we need to continue to work and focus on climate and behavior, generally just student behavior. And people were honest about that yes, student behavior needs to improve across the board, but that it's also society's goal and interest in that too, that schools didn't create problems of behavior, but that's where they manifest. And so how do we work to create an improvement in our climate, in our society, that also is part of our schools? And so social media interactions, having students become less antisocial, you could say more social, but really appropriate social skills is what we're looking for. And getting away from students, people, adults, anyone hiding behind keyboards and having face-to-face conversations. And that's part of why we're doing these, because it's important to get out there and do that. And so we've dedicated resources, more resources than we have in years, towards improving behavior. It's not perfect. I suspect some folks will want to talk about that tonight. We know it has to continue to improve, but certainly we acknowledge it, and we're committing resources to address it. We heard a lot about middle schools, and we asked about that because it's one of the things I really wanted to work on and improve. And so we got lots of ideas on what middle school could look like to improve, and you're going to see some plans for that. We have 6 pilot middle schools who are going to try some new things next year. We've already done some things this year, but particularly around curriculum and experiences, and you're going to hear more about that. People told us that the district should continue to expand academic and extracurricular activities. We've done that as well. This year we've had a big focus on field trips. We've had over 20,000 students take field trips this year. That's of course an expense. It also, you need chaperones, you need coordination and all those things. But as people have started to do that again after not taking field trips for 2 years, for the most part, they're reinvigorated by it. It's things that students look forward to. Parents are looking forward to the fact that they're engaged in their child's school in a new and different way than maybe they've done in 3 or 4 years. And so we're going to continue that. Staff experience, recognition, growth opportunities, vital to success. As I mentioned as I started, teachers impact everything. Great teaching solves so many problems, from behavior to academic excellence and everything in between. But in order to do that, we're in a different world. I've told this story a couple times. One of our academic programs that we really like and is new and more experiential, and one of our teachers is here from that school, is the 3DE program that is from Junior Achievement. And it's taking students in a school and giving them case studies to try to solve real-world problems around current business problems. And one of the business problems that I recently saw students at St. Petersburg High School try to solve was from Nielsen. Nielsen was one of the business partners who came in, and Nielsen said, "We can't get our employees to come back to work. What solutions do you have that would help get our employees to come back to work, so as we get them to come back, they don't quit on us," right? Because they like working from home. They like not having to dress up. They like being flexible with their children's schedule and all those types of things. And the students were brilliant. They came up with great ideas. Individuals from Nielsen judged those, took those ideas back, actually coined a winner and had some strategies they were going to take back. But of course, the whole time I'm laughing because we don't have that opportunity, right? We're a face-to-face business. And in terms of the employee experience, we have to find other ways other than you can work from home, right, in order to make our employees see the value in what they do. And certainly our employees see it in their interactions with our children, but as employers, we have to recognize how do we improve that employee experience. And so recognition is a huge part. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me this year to say, this is the first time I've received this birthday wish in 20 years of working in the district, or this is the first time it's been acknowledged in our core values. And just that little bit goes a long way. Student and parent voice, I think I've touched on that quite a bit. Quality of school lunch can be upgraded. There's not many things that I would say I'll blame on someone else, but you do know, and I remind the students of this, we don't control what has to go into school lunches, the nutritional values and all those types of things. We can control the quality in terms of what we do and how we do it, and we've worked on that, and I think I gave some examples earlier. But the federal restrictions on school lunch continue to get tighter, and it's going to become more of a challenge as sort of a fast food generation in some ways grows up and comes to school and sees something that looks very different. And so we are working on that. And then transportation. Certainly that's an area we need to continue to improve upon. We are rolling out a new sort of connection with parents this week in terms of asking if their children will ride the bus next year so we can do a better job routing. We have about 36,000 students that are eligible for transportation. About 22,000 ride the bus, but we route for all 36,000 at the start of the year. And so one of the things that we've learned from other districts who have been more efficient is to just route for the children who will actually ride the bus, because then you can be more nimble and quicker in your response. And so obviously having more drivers, being more efficient, we're making some routing changes to that is certainly one. So those are some high-level takeaways and things that we've done and are looking at doing in response to the feedback we've received. And as we launch this session, we tonight and the ones that we'll have coming up in the coming weeks and months around this next set of Listen and Learns, we look forward to the great feedback that we received in the previous ones. Our district strategic plan guides our work, and tonight, in a little bit, I'll talk more about that, but I want you to know that that is our roadmap, and our board approves that each year. It's in conjunction with our budget, as I mentioned earlier, and it guides our work. And so two of the things we've really focused on this year is student experience in learning. Certainly during the pandemic, our district did very well in terms of delivering curriculum virtually. I don't want to bring up bad memories of some of our teachers who had to teach simultaneously, but we did an amazing job. As frustrating as it was, our students got a great education compared to other states in this nation. But we need to get to a place where students come to school for things that they can't get online. We don't need to have our teachers using computers too much. We don't need to have an experience that I could just read in the book or watch a video of. What is it that the value of that classroom experience brings that I can't get anywhere else? That's what makes students come to school. That's what makes schools fun. That's what makes learning deep and engaging. And so we've focused on that a lot this year. And I've touched on some of the programs, some of the field trips, a lot of academic competitions we've put into play this year. And we want to continue with that. And then high expectations has been a focus. And there's lots of places where we've done really well, others not as well. But I emphasize to our staff and our community that for a year and a half there, we were just happy that people were able to come to school, people were able to come to work, and for all reasons that we can all talk about. But we needed to get back to a place where just showing up wasn't enough, that we expect high expectations from our students, from our parents, from our teachers, from our employees. And while we've not met every one of those, we're in the right direction. So I want to close with just some highlights from some of our Area 1 schools before we get to the questions and answers. And my apologies to the principals and parents who are here. If your school doesn't get mentioned, there's 1,000 others that we could share, but just a few highlights. So one is, we're a district that's known for our choice programs. Everybody who talks about our district says you have great opportunities, 80 different magnet programs. And there's a few here, particularly in Area 1, that have recently been recognized by Magnet Schools of America. The highest distinction is a School of Excellence, and the Tarpon Springs High School Leadership Conservatory for the Arts was named that this year. And the second highest is School of Distinction, and you can see a number of programs, the iSTEM at Countryside High School, Eastlake Middle School Academy of Engineering, which was recently named an Avid National Demonstration School, Liza Nelson Center for Gifted Studies, Garrison Jones, our dual language program there, and then Tarpon Springs Middle for their arts program as well. So lots to celebrate in terms of our district application programs. As I mentioned, recognizing our employees is very, very important. And there's several in Area 1. I picked a couple to highlight. One across the street, Jacqueline Reyes, was one of our top 10 finalists as Teacher of the Year, who's a Library Media Technology Specialist at Cypress Woods Elementary School. You see Fawn Baldizzi, who was our PCS Emerging Teacher of the Year. We choose 2 of those, and a teacher at Tarpon Springs Middle was one. And then our Student Volunteer of the Year, we recognize a student, an adult, and then a senior category. And the Student Volunteer of the Year is a student, and I think I'm on the wrong slide. You'll see her next. So this one is the School Counselor of the Year, who's right here at Eastlake High School, recognized by her peers as the School Counselor for the Year. And here's the Mentor and Volunteer slide. There's the student. She goes to Countryside High School, but she volunteers at Forest Lakes Elementary School. And then one of our Mentors of the Year is a volunteer here at Area 1 at Clearwater Fundamental Middle School. This one I know will anger the high school folks the most because it's the athletic championships, and there's no way around this. Every school wants to see themselves, but I put a few up there. The Palm Harbor University High School girls soccer team advanced to the Final Four. They were undefeated, their only loss of the year was in the Final Four, but they were ranked tops in the state for most of the year. And you can see Countryside High School there, one of our state champions, and their coach recognized in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame this year. Other awards, the Florida Association for Media and Education are winners. You can see many of the schools in Area 1 participated and won top prize or second prize. And we're really proud of the schools for competing in these. And these are mostly through our library media specialists. Think of our morning shows, video production, really great results from all of our schools. And you can see some of the winners. One of the highest honors you can receive academically is a National Merit Scholar. And we're pleased to have 22 National Merit semifinalists in Pinellas County this year, and 14 of those students are from Area 1. They represent less than 1% of the junior class for their performance on the preliminary scholastic aptitude test, and they'll compete with 16,000 other students across the country for 7,200 merit scholarships worth over $28 million. Recently, our district was notified of our Scholastic Art and Writing Award winners. We have 16 national medals, which is more than any district our size in the nation. 5 of those are gold medals, 11 silver. The 5 gold medalists will be recognized at Carnegie Hall this summer in a program in New York City on June 8th, I believe it is. And you can see one of those winners was a student here in Area 1 at Dunedin High School. Speaking of art, one of the most popular programs is our Kids Tag Art. You may not know, but you can buy these Kids Tag Art vanity plates from the tax collector's office. I'm sure going to the tax collector's office is one of the favorite activities for everybody in the room. But while you're there, you can buy one of these plates made by our students, and they're awarded. There's 3 students, 3 winners at every school, and then some that are district-wide winners, and you can see a couple of district-wide winners from Brooker Creek. The Tarpon Springs High School Outdoor Performance Ensemble has continued to be known for their national prominence. This year, they won the national championship for the schools their size in Indianapolis, and also participated in the 96th Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. Very, very proud. I mentioned the Junior Achievement 3DE case studies that we've seen. I mentioned the one at St. Petersburg High School. Our Dunedin High School program recently won a national championship in the Home Depot Case Challenge. Home Depot wanted to redo how the customer experience when people are renovating their kitchens, and the students from Dunedin High School defeated about 80 schools across the nation, and their principal is here as well. So I know I left a lot of highlights out of Area 1, but want to just say that our schools continue to do amazing things. And so we're going to go now to the question and answer portion, and I'll pass it back to Dr. Brown.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Hendricks, for that overview and for the information about how stakeholders' feedback is being used to guide our district. Now we will move on to the question and answer portion of this evening. There is 30 minutes for this portion of the agenda. We are going to try to get through as many questions as possible in the time that is allotted. If you need an index card at this time, or if you have written your questions already, please just raise your hand and a staff member will be by to collect your card or to provide you with an additional card. For those online, please type your questions in the chat. The staff will read your questions submitted online aloud. I will read questions aloud and will give the superintendent and board members an opportunity to respond to the questions. The board and the superintendent are committed to a standard of civility and decorum in conducting our community meetings. This includes refraining from clapping or making audible noises during or after a speaker or staff member comments. We appreciate you in assisting us in maintaining a civil and constructive environment. It is everyone's responsibility to ensure decorum, respect, and civility for all present. Lastly, please note that this meeting and all comments will be broadcast live on the internet, and the video will be publicly archived. Members of the public may always communicate with the board or the superintendent through their email address, board@pcsb.org or super@pcsb.org. And now to the questions. Our first question is, are you concerned with the problems associated with the credit recovery program and how they are used to inflate grades and graduation rates?
It's going to go first. All right, sure. So no, I'm not concerned. Everything when it comes to credit recovery is about implementation. And so are there opportunities for students to cheat the system and get ahead? Absolutely there are. Is that the way the program is designed? No, it's not. And so if it's implemented properly and it's supervised properly, then the program itself is a valuable tool. Just for the audience, for those not familiar, the credit recovery program comes into play when a student fails a course. So the credit recovery is not used for students to work ahead. In fact, it's not accepted by colleges in that manner. It's only used when a student fails a course. So they've sat through the seat time and now they're trying to recover it, and they do so on a mastery basis based on content. There are opportunities, like I said, for students to cheat, use their phone, use their computer, use other things. By the way, that happens in regular courses too. So it's about implementation, and it comes down to simply monitoring that.
Thank you, Superintendent Hendrick. Our next question, what is being done to retain teachers? Both of my kids who are in high school have lost quality teachers more than once this year.
I'll start, and then if the board wants to chime in. I mentioned that a little bit in my opening remarks about how important teacher quality is, and the fact that there are a lot of factors that go into why an employee wants to stay. But you know, the big thing now in the literature around teachers is not so much around recruitment as it is around retention. Colleges of education around the nation are producing far fewer graduates than they did even 5 years ago, and certainly far less than 15 or 20 years ago. So the way to solve this problem is to retain teachers in our district. And so employee recognition is a big part of that. Culture in schools is a big part of that. And that includes teachers and staff feeling like they have input, feeling like their voice is heard, supported around student discipline, supported from parents. All of those things are important factors in terms of retention. Obviously, salary is. I think everybody in this room knows we have a finite set of resources, and that budget comes in, and we negotiate with our teachers union, and there's been lots of conversations around the spread of those dollars between veteran teachers and new teachers and some laws around that. But at the end of the day, we have the resources we have around teacher salary, and our district has, relatively speaking, done a good job increasing overall average of teacher salaries, although you could argue the spread of that is frustrating to some. So teacher retention is the most important piece. I think I hit on that earlier because without great teachers, the rest of it, frankly, doesn't matter. And that's a key component to our work. I'd like to say, and Nancy and Lee are here, that one of my goals was to improve the relationship with our teachers union and with teachers in general. And I think Nancy most times would agree that that's happened. And so that's a key component. But our principals know that. You know, 10 years ago when you had a position available, you might get 25, 30 applicants for that position, and you have a lot of choices. That's not the case now. In some cases, you might have 5 applicants. In some cases, you may have none. And that's our job, is to try to make our schools more appealing to work in, because without great teachers, the rest of it doesn't matter.
I'd like to add that we need to do more mentoring from teachers that have maybe worked 10 years and the new teachers that are coming in. They need to have someone close to their classroom where they can go and say, I'm having a problem with this. What am I doing? It really makes a difference. I used to do that when I was at Clearwater Intermediate. I'd take the older teachers and we'd pair them with younger teachers that were struggling. And administration, all I was to do at that time was to check in with the mentor and make sure that they were really having these conversations. And I really believe having someone to go to and have that relationship with another teacher will help all teachers. And I think it'll help them relax more.
I would just like to share, as an educator that worked in the Transformation Zone school, I was assigned to a mentor, and that mentor was invaluable, on top of having resources through the teachers union. So having that partnership with the union and mentor is crucial to retaining educators, but we also have to remember that life circumstances also play a role in whether or not an educator decides to remain with Pinellas County Schools or venture out on some other career. So what I'm excited about is the opportunity of having housing available as another method or incentive to recruit and retain all staff. Something else that the district is doing is expanding their partnerships. We have Call Me Mister with the University of South Florida. Our talent specialists go to job fairs throughout the state, actually throughout the United States, to try and recruit diverse candidates. There is also things that we have advocated for in our legislative platform to increase the ability for people to enter the profession. So we do have some things that we are trying to do, but we also know that things that are going on impact whether or not someone decides to enter the field.
We're going to continue with budgetary questions. And so the next question is, even though the people in Tallahassee said the only loss of public schools due to the voucher law that was just passed would be dollars removed for students removed, given that there is a fixed amount of funding for Florida schools, how is the district preparing to make up for the inevitable drop in funds per student?
I'll start with that one. So I think the first thing when you look at House Bill 1, and it's already been signed into law, is you can have a philosophical argument over whether it's the best use of Florida's tax dollars are to pay for the family empowerment scholarships. Just in the education world, you could argue that investment in early learning, you could argue investment in teacher salaries, you could argue investment in world-class facilities might be a better use of dollars, but that argument is now lost. So it is what it is. I think I spoke to this yesterday at our school board meeting and talked about competition. We've been in competition for many, many years. That's why we have such a robust district application program. But in terms of the inevitable loss, so if you lose students, you lose the funding. We are a school district that, although we are 30th largest in the nation, we have been a shrinking district for about a decade because our school-age population has declined. The birth rate has gone down, and as 300 or 400 fewer kindergarten students go in each year, you eventually roll that up to high school, and you have thousands of fewer students than you did, say, in 2000 or 2005. So each year when that occurs, we restaff our schools. So we just don't say, well, you had 60 teachers last year, you have 60 this year. We say, what is the number of students that we expect to serve in your school next year? And then we allocate staff accordingly. That includes the district staff. As superintendent, I'm in the process currently of reducing district staff this year, and I'll be talking to our board about that in May at a workshop. As schools lose students, we have to reduce the same level of supports, even at the, but at the district level. Even if we don't lose schools or lose actual services, we can't afford the same level of people. So we reallocate, and that's how you mostly keep your budget balanced. The second important part is a really strong reserve. Our district has been very fiscally responsible. We have a strong reserve, and so if there is a year that there's a dip in funding, we're able to go to the reserves and meet that need and not reduce teachers or services at that particular time. Those two parts are really, really important. The flip side of that is, how do you become revenue generating, and how do you bring more students in, or certainly keep the ones that you have? I think we all know parents have choices, they've had those choices, and we have to be better. And so what are the things that public schools do that are better than other choices? Certainly one is the diversity of programs. I've said this for decades. I don't care which private school you go to in this district or ones nearby, they're never going to have the number of advanced placement offerings that we have. They're never going to have the number of dual enrollment offerings that we have on our campuses. They're not going to have veterinary, theater, music, drama, engineer. I mean, they might have one of those, but they're not going to have the diversity of choices within a parent's neighborhood, gifted programs, dual language, dyslexia. And so you may occasionally see somebody advertise one of those things, and that's great. We would say we do it better. We have a larger budget than anybody, and when we want to excel in things, we're able to do that. Now, there's other parts that we're not going to be as competitive in, right? We don't kick kids out of our schools. I mean, we deal with discipline, and we reassign students, but we don't have the option to say, we're not interested in you attending our school because you're not 6'8" and 250 pounds, or you're not a 1450 on the SAT, or you don't bring this voice that we need, right? We serve all students, and for many parents, that's a big plus. They want their children exposed to the real world in an environment that's safe and healthy and supportive. So that's what public schools do, and that's the narrative we have to preach. Might there be another choice for a family that's better? Obviously, there's lots of other choices. We're not going to bring a religious aspect to our schools that might be important to some families, right? But nonetheless, we'll stand our choices up, and we've been doing that for decades, certainly under the choice, really heavy choice the last 10 years. And if we lose students, we'll adjust fiscally but we would still say we're here to serve the students we have, and we serve 90% of Pinellas County's children now, and we expect to do that for many years to come.
I just want to say that over the last 7 years on the board, a lot of parents choose charter schools because they think they're going to get a smaller class size, they're going to get more individual attention. But reality is they go to these charter schools and they find out the troubles that they had in public schools are in the charter, and they don't have as many options. So a lot of times, we see them come back. The money doesn't follow, which is wrong, but we might see a dip. But I truly believe that as, they go and they think, oh, life's better over here, they're going to find out life isn't that much better. Public schools do a great job, and I really believe those families will come back.
I would just like to state that I am a public school advocate and an advocate for all children. So when it comes to competition, I'm going to continue to advocate for Pinellas County Schools, our programs, and that we improve in the areas that we need to improve in, because public schools are the best choice. And as it relates to the fiscal impact of House Bill 1, I've had conversations with our CFO, and the impact at this time can't be determined until we see how many students will utilize those vouchers.
Dr. Brown, we actually have an online question real quick. This is open to the board, obviously. Do you have any concerns about the student-counselor ratio that schools are facing that make it difficult to meet the needs of all students and their mental health, social, and academic needs?
I have concerns. We know that there are recommendations as it relates to the appropriate counselor ratio for students. We also know that budget constraints are also a challenge with that. And me personally, seeing the increase in the amount of suicides, Baker Acts, as well as just children crying out for help, I know that we need to do better. So something that I have done is reached out to our mental health providers, and I look forward to hopefully soon working with Superintendent Hendrick and those partners to see how we can better resource within the schools and outside of the schools. Because as Superintendent mentioned, our schools are a microcosm of what is being faced in the community. So if we have additional resources available to students and families outside of our schools, we're helping them when they come into our schools.
I agree with everything Ms. Edmonds said. We do need to make sure our schools are significantly staffed with the right kinds of counselors. With some of these new laws that are coming, students might not be able to even approach their counselors on certain issues, where you'll have to say, whoa, can't talk to you about that. This is going to become very dangerous. And so, yes, we need more counselors. Counselors need to be given the freedom to do their jobs. I know schools need help, lunch duty, helping with testing, but we need to keep those counselors in their office or out in the hallways talking to kids. And kids need to know who their counselors are and that they're safe talking to he or she. So I think that's really important. And if we do that, it will help children tremendously.
Just to piggyback off of what Ms. Long said, as it relates to state law, there is an opportunity for the community to step up. What the schools may not be able to do in ways that schools may not be able to support as strongly, there are community organizations that can do that work.
Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. For the proposed bus hubs next year, where will those be in the Eastlake area for magnet schools? So this is area 1.
So the exact stops haven't been determined because we want to see who needs a bus. That's part of that routing piece. But our general goal is school facilities. So on the East Lake Corridor Road, this facility, Cypress Woods, Brooker Creek, and then places where we have partnerships with municipalities, so maybe the library, places like that. So generally those stops are going to be safer, they're going to have cameras, they're going to have more adults around, but we'll determine those specifically once we understand the ridership. But think of school sites or municipal sites where parents can also park and wait if they need to, in the morning for the child to get on the bus and things like that.
When applying to magnet programs, why is academic achievement not part of the priority selection? Right now, the selection priority is proximity to school, siblings, professional courtesy, and military families. Why can't academic achievement be included in this?
That's a good question, and one that we've philosophically debated for years. There were some programs which there were academic requirements years ago. Some of those requirements still exist for a few programs, and those academic requirements really are around coursework and grades, not so much the top GPAs, and you don't rank that way, but you have to have algebra done or you have to have this course done. Part of that philosophy is giving students the opportunity to get into those programs because that may be the thing that motivates them the best. So our programs have requirements to stay in, but many, other than discipline, we do have discipline requirements to get in, but once you're there, if you're not being successful, you can be removed. I've talked to a number of parents who have said, but I think my child, and I'll use this example of the Academy of Engineering here, my child's gotten straight A's, they really like STEM, I want them to go to that program, why can't they be at the top of the list? And the answer is what I said, we try to be reasonable for all families whose children might have an interest. What we've also tried to do is where there are popular programs is then expand those and put them in multiple locations. That may be something that we look to do in the future to be more competitive, is to have, it's been suggested a couple times, have a school for high achieving students, and we do have gifted programs. But the other impact of that is the schools that are left behind. And so one of the frustrations for a lot of schools where there's fundamental schools nearby is you siphon off some of the students whose parents are most engaged, who are most prepared academically, and then you have a lower quality neighborhood school. And so we balance those factors as well, but it's certainly something that we've considered.
I'd like to add something. Mr. Hendricks talked about how if you set the bar high, I remember my very first principal back in the dinosaur days who said to me, if you expect, and I taught special ed, I had a self-contained group of kids, if you expect their academics way down, that's what you're going to get, and you're going to get nothing else. He said, I want you to push so hard, and I was blown out of the water that a lot of students achieved that, or else came really close. Once you show a child that you believe in them, they'll do it. And so be given an opportunity to go to IB, when you might as a parent think, oh boy, I don't know if this is a good idea. Majority of the time, they will surprise you. And if they don't, then they have the option to opt out, but at least you've given them an opportunity to go and try. And that's what we want for kids. We have to give them the opportunities.
As Florida policy changes and further restricts what is taught to students, how is PCS working to find balance with state requirements and with what is in the best interest of our students?
So I'm not going to shorten my answer to this one, but I am going to try to go through it because I want to make sure we get to everybody's questions. The bottom line is you have to train people on what's in the laws and what's not in the laws. So much of the rhetoric is around what people think is in the laws or what the politics become versus what is actually in the laws. I've said this so many times, when you look at the Parents' Bill of Rights, like 90% of it was already in state law and nobody would disagree with. And so it's not so much what is or isn't in there, but how do we interpret that? And what we try to avoid is self-censorship for our teachers, But there's also fear, and that fear is real. And so we have to calm those fears. We have to educate. We have to make sure that we're clear on our expectations, and then support. So we've tried to educate this year. We try to do it through videos so that it's one message and clear on that message. But then, people listen, they read, they hear about other things. Unfortunately, they read about what's on Facebook that happened at one school in one place, 6,000 miles from here. And then they internalize that to their classroom. And we need to try to avoid that. So it's really education. But then just we have to follow the law. There's no choice there. But really, most of the law, most of Floridians would not disagree with.
Will there be more efforts to reform classroom autonomy to the teachers by removing the pacing guides and scripted lessons?
No, we want everything scripted, of course. I mean, again, there's that sort of, oh my gosh, I have to be on pace versus, no, you don't. You have to teach your kids, and wherever they need to be today is where they need to be. And our teachers, any situation where people feel freedom and creativity, they outperform what would be a script. And we've seen that in student competitions. I mentioned that earlier. We see that when teachers are creative. Again, it's this narrative of I have to be on pace, I have to, versus what do I do to be creative? The flip side of that is it's easy to blame the district. It's easy to say, well, that's it, that's the curriculum, that's what I have to teach, right? I don't have to go home and plan because here it is. And I'm not suggesting that every teacher's like that, but I will suggest to you that that's an easy way out sometimes. And so just like we talked about the laws, don't rely on the least common denominator. Push, right? Push, be creative, go outside of the box. Our kids will learn far better when we can take those standard lessons, those pacing guides, that basic curriculum, you make it your own, and you adapt it for your kids in your classroom.
One thing that I'm proud of is the opportunities for professional development and the fact that our educators are certified teachers. So they are the experts when it comes to building rapport, knowing their students, differentiating. They are the people that can do it best. They're no shade, but in my opinion, there's no pacing guide that can accommodate the learning style for all children. So again, allowing that autonomy of the professionals in the classroom is key. And this is something that we recently had a discussion about, so I'm glad Superintendent Hendrick made it clear.
What is being done to develop, cultivate teacher leadership, and bring teachers to the forefront of teaching and learning, decisions, and system change?
So I think most of you know I oversaw academics in our school district the last 5 years and tried to infuse teacher leadership in any of our curriculum decisions, from committees to writing teams, all of those things, for the same reasons that we just talked about. Specifically around teacher leadership, I think looking at opportunities for teachers to be those leaders when it comes to curriculum, and you talked about professional learning, I smile every night when I leave the district administration headquarters, if that's my last stop, when I see groups of teachers collaborating in our spaces training. Those are voluntary opportunities. Nobody's forced to come, but they're there talking about, here's the curriculum that we're going to do for the next 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And it's because they see value in it. And they inform that curriculum. They come, they read it, they look at it, and then they say, this is how I'm going to make it happen. In terms of other opportunities and career ladders, as just somebody who's been a leader in our district in a number of capacities, I've always said to any person I supervise, any opportunity you get for advancement, I want you to take advantage of, because in education, there's not that many, right? As a teacher, you may teach for 35 years in the same classroom and absolutely love it. And you may be a department chair, you may participate in district committees and other things, but the bulk of your work on a daily basis may be the same, right? So how do we continue to motivate and reward and expand? And so looking at partnerships, we've done some things with PCTA this year to get the teacher voice and asking for input. We have some really exciting things, a new look at our ESET 2 program this summer, which elevates sort of our experienced teachers and how they can give their input. We have some teachers who have some really brilliant ideas and do local clubs and meetups at coffee shops and things. And I think all of those things are important to growing our profession and keeping people excited about teaching.
Will the district continue to assess students monthly on iStation and benchmark assessments in addition to the state-required progress monitoring?
We want to test every day, all day. No. So there are some things that are needed, and iStation is an elementary school assessment that happens in real time, and it's critical for a number of reasons, including promotion around reading. But in general, we did scale back a little bit this year in terms of our district assessments, and in middle school in particular next year, we're going to scale way back as part of our middle school redesign. So I think that most of our assessments are formative. Again, that's something I oversaw. We continue to want to do that. The board has talked about that, but we've also laid out sort of what's the board's requirement versus what is district or state required, and then what's sort of traditional, like exams. And I think one of the things we all have to kind of come to an agreement on in the long term is that our assessments have to change because of artificial intelligence. We're in a new place in the world that real assessment is going to have to be conversation. The idea of go home and write a paper and bring it in and I'm a grade, I mean, we all know that's a thing of the past at this point. It has to be live in front of someone, conversations, real writing, debate, based on your content knowledge, but then you have to bring different types of assessments to the table. So that's going to look very different 5 and 10 years from now, and we have to be in front of that. But to also say that for every one of those district assessments that we have, many are optional, many teachers really enjoy the data, and it does help to give a good picture, including informing parents of their children's progress.
Continuing on testing, what is being done to reduce the amount of testing in elementary school? We are missing out on a lot of instruction time for testing. Kids can only hear this test is important so many times before they quit caring about the test.
No, I don't want you to repeat it. No. I touched on a couple of those, but one of the things, and I've said this with our principals, you should peak at the end of the year because that's really the assessment that matters most for students, right? So the one that they take in August, the one that they take in September, all those things, you always want students to do their best. But that shouldn't be the time where you're trying to get the most energy, right? I don't know what's happening in the Rays game tonight, but if they finally lose tonight, don't blame it on me, but that's not the end of the world, right? You need to be the best team in October, not in April. And so you want to ramp up with that, and assessments help you with that. But obviously having kindergartners over-assessed is nobody's goal, and it's something we continue to address.
Our next 4 questions deal with student discipline. There is no punishment for violent behavior, cussing at teachers, students. Parents are not accountable. Why has the district taken away the punishment that would keep students in line?
So the code of conduct is really, really clear. Profanity is not allowed certainly not directed at adults. We've suspended more students this year than we have in the last 3 years, and the rest of the consequences that come under that. So I would say where that situation exists is a failure at the school level to do that, and we address that. In terms of district climate and behavior support, I think I mentioned earlier, we've provided more of that because we recognize the need. But I would say that our code is very, very clear on what's acceptable and what's not. And I think the board knows, it was part of my interview process, it's a focus of mine. I don't scream and yell about it. I just consistently remind people that they must do and enforce. And we have one area superintendent here tonight, but I remind them each and every day. Really, that's the basis for improving our schools, is to have a great climate. And we cannot tolerate misbehavior. Now, what one person thinks is misbehavior and what they think they would do to that student may not be even legal, let alone what we might do per our code of conduct. But nonetheless, we consequence all the time, and consequences are up this year. Whether individuals feel that at their school or not is a different topic.
I know you have been working on improving discipline issues in our schools. Since violence is escalating, are you looking at extra measures to protect your employees?
Yes is the answer. Teacher training, school training. There's a lot coming this summer. We shared this we will share it with our board next week. Regionalizing some of our discipline schools so that there's greater access in different parts of the county. and that actually helps with busing as much as it does knowing that it's there. So yes, particularly in terms of training, but also just being clear with leaders around what our expectations are around behavior, and when those expectations aren't met, that we have to have consequences.
And I believe it goes back to resourcing. We have to address the need of the whole child. When we understand that there are different life challenges that they're facing, there are different things that might be going on in the classroom that are causing that behavior, we have to look at it. And I know that we have a student service team that is working hard to address and meet those needs, but as I mentioned earlier, we need more. And I think, again, reaching out to partners will be key, especially as it relates to recidivism and things that we can't control within the school district.
One of the things we're looking at, here goes the pacing guide, is that we need to help teachers have activities that will build relationships and make sure that put the curriculum aside for a week or two and let's focus on developing those relationships. If a child trusts you and they feel safe in their classroom and you know students, you really get to know them and you know their background and some of the things that aren't going to show up on our computer screen. By doing that, you're going to have better discipline because you're telling them what you expect, you model it, we talk about it. It works. I taught for 30-some years, and that was the first thing I ever did. You have to build relationships, and children have to trust you. And if they do, they still might have problems, but they're going to be more likely to come and say, Mrs. Long, I made a mistake. And then you can talk about it.
Thank you. I think we've got 3 formal questions in a couple of minutes. And so next question. Over the years, we have cut the number of campus monitors at the middle and high schools level. They were very involved in relationship building to find problems before they manifested. Deans handling discipline issues instead of APs. So it's not a question, but did you want to?
As part of the unit allocation process, we've talked, and I think the area superintendent here can verify this, of how do we better structure that discipline. We've talked about adding deans at certain schools, campus monitors, and part of that is just what is valued more in terms of the number of employees. And so you can only spend that dollar once, and if it's more campus monitors, then we have to say, well, what positions do we cut to do that? We have them at all of our secondary schools. We also have behavior specialists at nearly every secondary school that also assist with that, which is something we didn't have 5 years ago. So those are choices that you make, and principals, working with their area superintendent, can also make some of those choices independently.
And I don't want to get the teachers mad, but I was a teacher, and we all had to stand at our doors. And I know sometimes you get over involved in a lesson, and if you miss being at the door 1 or 2 times, that's fine. But with kids seeing us, even in high school, they see us standing at our doors and monitoring what's going on. It's going to make a big change. And you also can have conversations with kids. They might stop and tell you something. And again, you're building those relationships, and that's extremely important.
Can you explain the district's plan to more effectively support our restorative practice initiative?
Sure. So we've had restorative practices starting probably 7-8 years ago, did lots of training about 5 years ago. One of the things when you talk about consequences in schools and sort of a misnomer of restorative practices, sometimes people think that that's the absence of consequences and it's a conversation, and that's not the case. Restorative practices is both preventative, and then it's also after a consequence happens, right? When a student gets a consequence, how do they reintegrate into a classroom successfully? So we have data on that this year, over 1,000 restorative practices conferences as part of the discipline process. I think training is the piece. You go out and you train every employee in the district, and everybody sees it and understands it. And then you have turnover and things like that, and you retrain. But probably relaunching some of that training now's the time for that. And it's unlike a lot of other, not unlike a lot of other things that launch very quickly. Everybody sees it, then it fades a little bit, and then you have to retrain to get back up. And we're probably at the cycle for that. But I can tell you confidently over 1,000 restorative practice cases are in our system this year for either reintegration into classrooms and or students who have small conflicts, and that's the best way to resolve it is through conversations.
Would it be possible to use school board property to provide housing for our lowest paid employees?
It's a simple answer, yes. We're working on that. Our first attempt is at the Tomlinson property in St. Petersburg. We have a number of other properties, one in Largo, one in Clearwater, that we'll look at after that. The state legislature is addressing affordable housing right now, which is actually making it easier for some of the partners that we're seeking to do that. So just for some timelines, we put out an RFP for Tomlinson. We had 4 responses. We interviewed those 4. We've cut it down to 2 as recently as Monday. And we hope to have a resolution sometime this summer. But the actual positive out of the state legislature in the last couple of weeks has been it's actually more lucrative for some partners. So we may be able to look at it a little bit better. Having said that, 13,000 employees, we may be talking a couple hundred units on that property, a couple dozen here, a couple dozen there. It's not going to solve everything. But one of the things a lot of teachers have said, it's just the thought and the goodwill of it that is also really important.
Our final 2 questions. First, what is the status of teachers when the new bill extends the 3-year, takes effect July 1st, and their certification expires June 30th?
We're in the process now of understanding what those parts of that law are. Our HR team is literally working on it today, but what we believe it to be would be anybody who's in year 3 would have a 2-year extension on most of the requirements. There may be 1 or 2 that doesn't apply to. Sometimes the content area is the first one, but it's the others like ESOL, ESE, all those other things. So it's one of the parts of House Bill 1 that we think is really good, and something that the Superintendent's Association asked for was some relief with that, is to give teachers 5 years to meet some of those requirements instead of 3.
And our final question, since the pandemic has been declared over, it seems that things are back to business as usual. What are you going to do to support students and staff who are dealing with long COVID symptoms?
I think one of the positives that we as a district have had for a number of years is a nurse in every school. And that was before the pandemic. Certainly that helped us tremendously during the pandemic. And like every other position, I chose not to chime in on school counselors and the lack of applicants we have there. There's a nursing shortage as well. So although we have the funding, part of that is through the Juvenile Welfare Board and the Pinellas County Commission to do that, the Department of Health. We also don't have sometimes the staff. But from a health standpoint, strictly health, our nurses are in every school, and we have a contract with a nursing organization where we don't have a full-time nurse to come in and support. From a mental health standpoint, that's everything that we talked about before. I would say the biggest challenge from licensed mental health support, we have a lot of our counselors and certainly all of our social workers who are licensed mental health counselors. And again, there's been this transition in the workforce where they can work from home virtually for 6 hours a day, turn the screen off and be done. And that's, not the way school is. School is students are in your face and they're talking to you and parents are emailing and it's around the clock. Whereas some of the options now in the mental health world allow you to turn the screen off and that's it, right? You don't see the patient again, you don't get emails, you don't get phone calls. And so that's part of our challenge in making sure that people feel part of their work and they can see the fruits of that labor day in and day out. But certainly responding to both the physical parts or the health parts of it, but also the mental parts are going to be a continued challenge for every school district.
Thank you, everyone, for those questions, and thank you to Mr. Hendrick, Ms. Edmonds, and Ms. Long for being here and answering the questions for our stakeholders. I am now going to turn it back over to Superintendent Hendricks to give us an overview of the district's strategic plan and how everyone here tonight can give direct input to inform the board and the district leadership on the 2023-24 district strategic plan.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And I want to thank the questions. We said 30 minutes. I think we probably did 45. So please give us credit for taking every single one of them, and we'll take more individually when we're done. But in all seriousness, you never know the turnout or how many people and those types of things. So I think we're kind of playing it by ear at this first one. I thank everybody for their questions. I'm going to make this quick on our district strategic plan because I know people have been sitting, and that's not in a good adult learning style. But our district strategic plan renews annually. And one of the things that we're looking to do around our strategic plan is not change our vision, mission, or core values, not change our 7 strategic goals, but to reduce the number of goals that we have, the action goals. Currently we have 161, down to a more manageable number. And my goal in doing that is not to say something isn't important in our district anymore, but for us to be able to elevate the things that we think are most important. And frankly, I think we talked about a number of them tonight that require the greatest focus for our district, and where the parts of our budget that are flexible should be more dedicated, dedicate those funds to that, and then be more public in how we report on that. So we're looking to focus those goals a little bit more, prioritize, demonstrate some transparency with that. And the big change would be going from an annual report to one that can still be amended each year, but really focuses on a 3-year set of metrics that we can see progress as a community. And those 7 strategic goals would stay the same, but maybe 3 to 5 goals under each one as opposed to 25 or 30. And some of those 25 or 30 honestly aren't really action goals, but they're just metrics. And we'd like to make those metrics very visible on our district or on our website, and have the public be able to see our progress on those. Currently, we have all of those 161 goals, but we don't publicly state where we are with them on a regular basis from a progress monitoring standpoint. We sort of do an annual report on that. So that's my goal, and the board has supported that, which is to sort of say what are the most important things we want to focus on. Again, I think the group here tonight hit on several of those. So we have a number of ways for the public to be involved in that process. Our staff, divisions and departments, we've already done this process with our principals. We started it yesterday with our school board. They spent about 4 or 5 hours digging into this and coming up with what they think their priorities are. These opportunities for the public are part of that, and there's some posters here I'll talk about in a moment. Our student leaders gave us that. We have a student rights responsibilities group that do that. And then any member of the public can submit suggestions on what those priorities should be via our district's Let's Talk platform on our website. We're also having some focus groups across this. We'll do some with the Classroom Teachers Association and others to gather input from a diverse and variety of stakeholders. So you can see a little bit of a timeline there, some ones that we've done already. You see the one this evening. We've got some more coming in the future, and this will be presented to our board in the summer and then finally voted on in September with our budget at the same time. So we want to hear from you, and here are the questions around the room tonight. You can just go directly up and write on the posters. First question, what does Pinellas County Schools do exceptionally well, and how do you know that we do it well? So part of our district strategic plan is to say, what are the things that we already do really, really well? And I think each of us could cite those things. And then how did we get there? If you say that we're exceptional in the arts, how do you know that? And how do you think we got there? Because that might be a roadmap to be successful in other areas. The second question is, what do you want Pinellas County Schools to be known for? We may have some things that we do very, very well, and those may be some things that we want to be known for, but what are the other things that we want to be known for? And so we encourage you to share those with us tonight. The third question is, what areas would you like to see us accelerate and or improve upon? So we may be doing them well, we may not be doing them well, but what are those areas specifically that you would say, this needs improvement in our schools? And again, I think some of those were mentioned in the questions tonight. And then the last question is, what ideas do you have that could elevate the district's prominence? So not just citing those things that you think we could improve upon, but then what ideas do you have to say, this would actually solve it, or this would actually make it better? And so all kind of 4 of those threads come together. And as I mentioned, our board went through this activity yesterday. All of our principals have done it. And we're doing it with a number of groups in the coming weeks and months as we gather input. So for those that are joining online tonight, you can do that virtually through a QR code. Those that are here, you can do it through a QR code as well. You can scan that. That's on the screen. You can also place that feedback on the posters in the room. And as you do that tonight, the board members that are here and myself are also available for individual questions, comments, discussion, and we look forward to those as well as your feedback tonight. So I want to thank those that are here with us tonight. Really appreciate you coming out to Eastlake High School in Area 1 for our first of these community connections, an extension of our Listen and Learn. And we look forward to your feedback tonight and in the future. Thank you so much.